that we are live on the internet, and our positions are reversed. It's really weird. I don't know what's going on.
Yeah, why? That's weird.
What happened, Mike?
What happened?
I don't know. Why is
I don't know. Eric's on the left. I'm on the right. Something's wrong in the world. Oh, there we go.
That was bad.
That was a close one.
Yeah, that was not good. Why'd that feel so weird? It's like sleeping on the wrong side of the bed.
I was just gonna say that it's like claiming your spot in the bed. Like, no, I can't. And that's weird because I cannot. Both my wife and I just can't do it. If you do it, it just feels wrong.
What if you both? So how does that happen? Because I've never cohabitated with somebody for any length of time. What if you both like the same side? Does that, or is that?
Well, I see that I couldn't answer because Samantha and I have been together for so long that the first time we slept in a bed with someone else was together. So,
but I mean,
we've always had that spot. So I don't know. I think that would be more of an issue of like you're an adult and you're in a new relationship, and then like that's my spot. Like,
right. But I used to do the right side.
Yeah, I guess you just got to suck it up. But that would be so bad. My family reminds me I'm so much like Sheldon Cooper that I have spots and I have to sit there.
Nice.
So, and it's funny because my mom is visiting right now, and her husband's here, and he's a really great guy, by the way.
Is he?
And I joke because I said I don't even know what to call you. Like, are you my stepdad? Like, it seems weird, but
right.
I have my spot at the kitchen table, and he just sits there. I don't say anything, but it's really hard for me, and my whole family knows it. But
they haven't said anything either.
No, I'm just trying to be respectful, and I'm just like, I have a spot on the couch. I am like Sheldon. That's my spot. Like, what are you doing? What are you doing sitting in my spot? That's my spot.
Does he also sit there?
No. So, but Abby, it's funny. Abby and I last night were watching The Boys, and we were catching up on the rest of this season so far, and because we were about 3 episodes behind.
So I know you were questioning what it's okay and not okay to watch with Abby, but if you're watching The Boys, you've decided everything's fine.
Yes. And in fact, Samantha, we were all up in the attic because my mom and Barry were downstairs watching something
normal.
NCIS. So
yeah, some standard fare.
Yeah. And so I went up all the way up to the attic, and that's Samantha's like getaway spot. So she's up there crafting stuff on her Cricut.
Right.
And Abby and I are watching, and Samantha just stops in the middle of it. She's like, "What the hell are you watching?" Because she could hear it.
Right.
And she's like, "I can't believe you're watching that with her." I'm like, "Samantha, she's gonna be 18. What?" She's like, "But is it?" And we both agreed the show is off the rails.
Oh, but yeah, I've only watched the first 2/3 of the first season, and I know it's bonkers.
It's gotten worse too. It's gotten raunchier. They've definitely they've been testing the fence every year, and they're like, let's see how much further wow. So so Sam's like, I can't believe you're watching. Like, this is unbelievably crazy. I'm like, yes, it is. It is a crazy show, but I love it. I love how irreverent it is. I love how it, and I hate to say it, I think it's a much more accurate portrayal of what superheroes would actually be like versus what we see. So there was a great line. Abby and I looked at each other and we high-fived. So in the last episode, and we're all caught up, Butcher says instead of he starts off with great power, right?
Yeah.
And then instead of comes great responsibility, he's like, with great power, you just basically become an even greater asshole.
Nice.
And which is absolutely true. So, absolute power corrupts absolutely. So
it does.
But
yeah, if you had, if you had the powers of Superman, or in this case, Homelander, I mean, no question,
unless you're Superman.
What's that?
Unless you're Superman.
Unless Superman. That's the real power of Superman. Not that
we talked about this. I that is always for someone who says they're a Superman fan, I always ask them what's Superman's greatest power.
Yeah, the fact that
if they don't answer that question right, they are nope. You're not a real fan.
Yep.
Nope.
Yeah. No, Superman's greatest power is that he doesn't, take over the world as a demigod.
Right. And he easily could. He could easily, if he wanted to be wealthy, he could just walk down to the bank and be like, "Give me all your money."
Yeah, what do you do?
But what I do love about The Boys this season is that it takes that evil Superman trope, which I would say is overused, but it's utilized so well in this show. And I think for like the first 2 seasons, I kept saying, what is it that holds him back from just being totally off the rails?
Right, because the first 2 seasons, I only watched, like I said, the first 2/3 of the first season. But he's still like beholden to a corporation, kind of,
Yes.
He's
So
got a boss.
this season definitively answers that question.
Okay.
So, which I really appreciate, because it was definitely one of my things. Like, why is he subservient though? And you totally see why. And it's a really cool take. It fascinates me. The show fascinates me, and it's so nihilistic and just basically removes all hope for humanity, but it's still great. So,
No, I'll have to watch it all at some point.
yeah, it's wonderful, and it's wonderfully irreverent, and it's a nice escape from the usual stuff that you get for superheroes and stuff. Oh, and I have to say, another thing I highly recommend is I'm loving Miss Marvel so far on Disney Plus.
I heard it's good.
I love it. It's definitely aimed more at teens, but since I'm
the opposite of The Boys.
yeah. That's right. It's the antithesis of The Boys.
Yeah, it's on Disney.
But it's great. It's really entertaining. I read a review somewhere that says it treats being Muslim as normal, and I was like, that's a perfect example of how you kind of see the show. Like, you don't see it as the show about a Muslim American kid. You see it as a show about a kid, and she just happens to be Muslim, and it's just a part of the show. And it's just great. And Abby relates to it so much. She turned to me. She's like, "Dad, this is I really feel like they made the show for me." I'm like, that's great. I said, because I kind of feel like they made it for me too, and I'm not a teenage girl. Never was.
Right.
So. And it's really good so far. I'm really enjoying it.
Nice.
And looking forward to the final episode of Obi-Wan Kenobi tomorrow, which I've really enjoyed that as well. So
I watch, I don't know if you know this, but I used to watch one episode of one show a week, but now I have a second person. So now I watch 2 episodes of 2 shows per week.
You've doubled your output.
I have. So I'm wrapping up Ozark with Kate on Sundays. But now on Mondays, I'm watching. On Mondays with Gizmo, we watch the more nerdy fare. All the Marvel and DC stuff that we're missing. So her and I are watching Peacemaker every Monday.
Oh, I love Peacemaker,
and it's good. We're like 3 episodes in or so.
Peacemaker was great, but I prefer The Boys, but Peacemaker was great.
Yeah.
You definitely see a lot of inspiration from The Boys in Peacemaker.
Okay.
But I really enjoyed Peacemaker. Abby did too, but we both agree that The Boys is better.
My friend thinks that Peacemaker is the best thing DC has done since The Dark Knight.
I probably wouldn't disagree. I mean, I like Shazam. I think Shazam was great.
What about the Joker?
I liked it.
I loved it. I thought it was amazing.
I liked it. I didn't love it.
Okay.
I thought it was good. I thought it, was its own little thing. It was good. I didn't want to revisit that world, and now I know they're making a sequel, but apparently it's going to be a musical.
That's hilarious too, by the way. It's great.
Yeah.
Why not?
Yeah, sure. I may want to see it just for that, though. Like,
at least someone's doing something different.
Yeah, and I'll take that because Hollywood has the Hollywood cloning machine where you get one successful thing and then you just do it. By the way, great example of that where they clone themselves, and by the way, pun very much intended, is Jurassic World Dominion.
Yeah,
My goodness, that is one of the worst movies I've ever seen.
really.
It was so bad.
But the gang's all back. It looks like it was going to be cool because they've got the whole cast from all of them back together again.
It was. I swear, it was like a third grader watched the first Jurassic Park and Jurassic World and said, "Let me come up with some really cool ways to put these two together," and it just is so bad, so bad. And I feel like the Avengers, I feel like Marvel does fan service right. It does it just right, where it's clearly fan service, but you appreciate it. In this movie, they tried fan service, and you're just like, you roll your eyes and grunt, and I'm like, really? There are callbacks to the first movie that are just so god-awfully bad that, I mean, Abby and I looked at each other. I never do this. Halfway through the movie, I looked at her, and I'm like, is it me or does this movie suck? And she's like, Daddy, this is so bad. And yeah, it was just so, and I'm like, maybe it'll get better. Nope. It was every set piece was the same set piece, just different setting. Same thing. Someone has to do task X, and a dinosaur jumps out of the shadows and interferes with it, but they miraculously escape. And that is the whole movie. That is the plot of the entire movie. So,
nice.
And there are no stakes because no one. Oh, is it a spoiler? I guess it's a spoiler. No one dies except for the bad guy, who dies in an incredibly cliched Ned Landry way. And if you've seen the first movie, you would get that reference.
I got it.
Yeah, they basically completely. It's Ned Landry all over again. By the way, right down to the Barbazol can. Yes. Yeah, for no reason whatsoever. I just have to give this away. For no reason whatsoever, mustache twirling bad guy, after his plan has been foiled, grabs all the stuff so that he can start over again, right? And gets into vehicle. Vehicle gets stuck. He gets out of the vehicle. He's grabbed the Barbazol can. By the way, the same one, which is now 30 years old. For whatever reason.
Okay.
I mean, are those embryos still in it?
Yeah.
And are they still frozen? Because I would love to know the power source they used in that little Barbazol. Is it nuclear powered? Anyhow, and then he meets exactly the same fate that Ned Landry does. And when I say exactly, I mean shot for shot, beat for beat, same thing.
Wow.
And I just did the person who wrote that be like, oh my God, I'm being so clever. I'm going to call back to the original movie. Look how great look how wonderful I can write.
It's a homage.
Yeah. It was so bad. But
well, I'm not missing it because I probably wasn't going to see it, so that saves me.
And I have to say, as a scientist, it drives me crazy because when we got out, I said to Abby, I said, do you feel like that whole movie was basically saying that scientists are evil and they're destroying the world? And she's like, totally. That's the whole message of the movie. Scientists have messed up our world, and these evil scientists are going to keep tinkering with things until the world is destroyed. And I'm like, yeah, that's pretty much the message I got too. Cool. So, and then if you saw the last movie, there's a retcon to the whole point of the last movie. It was terrible. And I could keep going, but it was.
Did you like all the rest of them?
Well, I loved Jurassic World. I thought when I wasn't excited about Jurassic World because I thought, okay,
is that the first Chris Pratt one?
Yeah.
Okay.
I really enjoyed that one, and I was surprised how much I enjoyed it that I went back to the theater to see it again, which I wouldn't have expected myself to do. And so I'm like, all right, this was cool. And then the second one came out, and it got predictably bad, and I said, this is terrible. But it was entertaining, but it just was. I was like, all right, I had no need to go see it again. I don't think I've ever seen it again.
Right.
I remember the basic plot of it, and then this movie, which by the way calls back to that movie in a way that you really had to remember that, and it was, I don't know, the plot was incoherent, and from what I do remember from the other one, the subplot involving the girl who, did you see the second one?
No.
Okay, we didn't miss much.
Is
Yeah.
Chris Pratt in the second one?
So, and then the way they brought the original cast back was so ham-fisted, and it was just terrible. It was so bad. And they weren't even good in it. They were terrible. They like totally phoned it in. It was just bad. It was just a god awful movie. And moving on, because I'm pissed.
You know, I mean, but is that movie worse than the way schools are safe?
I guess that's one of our worst segues, but
Yeah, is it? Is
well,
it a worse?
speaking of things that annoy me to no end, and it's funny, we had planned on talking about this last week, and then you had technical issues, and we couldn't get on. But completely independently, sitting around my table last night with my mom and her husband and my wife, we were talking about schools and what schools are focusing on, and you know where I think things are going wrong in schools specifically. But to me, that's an extension of society. And I had mentioned that I can speak from authority because of the number of schools I visit, and because of what I specifically do, is that to me, one of the big problems that schools face isn't security, by the way. I know we talked about that the week before. Every school I've gone to has a pretty tight security when it comes to getting into the building, and how they vet you coming in, and got to show ID. And it's maybe one school or two schools I've gone to where I basically walked in and no one said anything.
That's how every school was when I grew up, by the way.
Yeah, me too.
Especially in Florida. Florida schools are open, or they used to be. They're probably not anymore. But they're open air. The open hallways. They're outside kind of. So yeah, you just stroll in like it wasn't a big deal.
So that's not so much the issue, but almost every school I go to, one of the questions they ask me is, "Do you do anti-bullying?" And if you know me well, you know that is one of the things that's like nails on a chalkboard to me. And I cannot, and this is even before I started this whole process, before we lost Reese. It used to drive me crazy when we'd have speakers come and talk about anti-bullying, because they would almost always focus on the bully and stopping the bully. And I used to be the person, especially in faculty meetings, who'd raise their hand, and I would say, "What are we doing about the kid who is bullied? What are we doing for them?" And the answer is always the same. "Oh, well, we want them to speak up." I said, "Yes, we want them to speak up, but what are we doing about the fact that they're going to continue to get bullied? That you'll never stop the bullying?" It's folly to think that you can eliminate bullying, but the problem is that schools operate in this weird space where it's kind of like that psychological phenomenon where you think about losing weight, and then in your head you have, so now you're successful, and then you just eat anyhow and you gain the weight.
Right.
Which is the grand irony of all this. I think schools fall into this where they're like, "Oh, we're gonna teach kids not to be bullies, therefore there's not gonna be bullies. And if we do that, the kids who are bullied won't be bullied anymore." And I think in this weird kind of headspace, that's where they operate. And they have this belief that they're stopping it for some reason. And so the kids who do get bullied and come out and say, "Listen, I'm being bullied," the focus immediately shifts to the bully, and the stuff that they do to deter that bully doesn't even work. And then the kid who was bullied now kind of wallows in it and gets left alone, and there's really nothing much done for them. And that's always bothered me, because I used to ask, and a lot of times I'd get like the roll of the eyes, and people get mad at me for saying, "When are we teaching the kids who are bullied some resiliency? When are we teaching them coping mechanisms?" Because that's reality. We can talk about getting rid of the bullies, and we should. And I'm not saying that it becomes mutually exclusive, that you don't talk about getting rid of bullies, but you also have to talk about the ramifications of being bullied and how you help the kids who are, and how you help them to help themselves. And that comes from a deeply personal experience that I had. I was bullied relentlessly as a kid because I've always been big. And I think I've mentioned this before. I'd get on the bus and there was these kids who would do the you remember the old dog food Kibbles and Bits? So there was a dog food called Kibbles and Bits, and they had
I heard the dog food. I thought you meant there was something about it. Yeah, I heard the dog food. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So they had a commercial, and it was like, Kibbles and Bits, gotta get my whatever. And I would get on the bus in the morning, and my bullies, and it was a whole bunch of them in the back of the bus, would every day. The bus driver did nothing about it. Every day I get on the bus, and they would sing the song, but they called me Chibbles and Tits. And
Clever.
Yeah, I got to give them points for creativity.
Yeah.
And it got to me, like it really did affect me, but I didn't say anything. Typical bullied kid, I wouldn't say anything, and I'd just go about my day and try to ignore it and hope it would go away. But it didn't. And eventually, I didn't want to say anything to my father because my dad was this like uber macho guy. Captain of the football team, policeman. I thought he moonlighted in the Justice League at night.
Right.
And I didn't want to be the disappointment to him that was not that person, right? That I'm getting bullied, and I can't tell my dad that. He's going to be so disappointed in me that I'm being bullied. But I finally did. I finally did say something because I had reached my breaking point. And my dad, to my surprise, like I thought my dad's answer would be, go back in the back of the bus and kick this, crap out of these kids. That's really what I thought he would say, because that's that was my childhood interpretation of my dad, the tough guy, right? He's gonna tell me to go be Rambo, and he didn't. His advice to me was, first of all, you got to believe in who you are first and foremost. You got to be happy with that. And if you're not, then let's do the things to help you work on that. And he said, secondly, you got to stand up for yourself. You got to say, hey, listen, tell them, look them in the eye and say, you can keep saying it. You can keep doing this, but you're not going to get to me. And keep going, but you're wasting your breath. And I was skeptical, so I didn't do it at first. And then one day I just did it. I stood up and I looked him in the eye. I'm like, I did exactly what my dad said. And sure enough, they continued. So I came home. I told my dad, I said, Dad, they didn't stop. He goes, keep doing it. He's like, just let them know it's not getting to you. And then sure enough, like a week later, it's like that frog in the pot that slowly gets warmed. Eventually, they get boiled. It was the opposite for me, though. Eventually, they just stopped. And one day I realized it. I'm like, holy crap, they're not picking on me anymore. And my dad was right. And it's been a thing I've employed the rest of my life when people, just whatever, you can say what you want. But it helped build a confidence in me that honestly shouldn't have been there for a kid who's being bullied. But my dad, instilled this in me, and it worked. And I never hear that when we talk to these kids who are being bullied, ever. I never hear people talking about doing that and empowering these kids who are bullied. And I think it's because schools are like that person who's in the dam that's breaking and the water's coming through the holes. And you're sitting there trying to block all the holes and you don't know which one. And schools are constantly doing that. And so I think, we have to do anti-bullying. So they want, they got their finger on that one hole and they're not worrying about everything else. And, so that's why when schools ask me, do you do anti-bullying? I say, no, I'm not against bullies. And they're like, oh, wow, that seems weird. I'm like, no, I'm for the thing that prevents them in the first place. And I don't know.
I think you should say yes and then do your thing, just FYI.
What?
Yeah, I do anti-bullying and this is my approach.
Well, no, I mean, honestly, the way I do it, I think actually works better because when I say no, they go no, and I go, wait, let me explain. And then I pull them in and I tell them what I do. And they're like, oh, that makes sense. Because my explanation is let's make this analogous to healthcare, right? What our healthcare system that everyone, complains about is really a palliative system, which is all about treating already pre-existing things. and it's not a preventative system. And the way we go about treating bullying in this country is the same system. It's that palliative, let's treat what happened as a result, right? And let's stop the bully after they've become a bully. And the way you prevent that, or at least you, and again, prevention isn't 100%. You know, this is about mitigation. And that's the other thing I think they should be using. Not bullying prevention, bullying mitigation, because you're never going to prevent it. I'm sorry, it's natural selection. It's life. So you're never, and that's why I feel like the focus schools have is misguided in most schools. I'm not saying all schools. I've gone to schools that they do it great, and I love them for it. And I tell them, I'm like, you guys are just you've nailed it. And interesting thing is that in those schools that I've seen that, they have the least amount of bullying. They have a really great school culture.
I was going to ask if the data pans out. Like, does it work?
As far as actual real data, I don't have it. I mean, of course, that's anecdotal, which, often makes me cringe. But I think my personal sample size has been big enough now with the number of schools I've spoken to that I definitely see that as a real thing. It's a real viable thing. And if I really wanted to do actual research on it, I'm sure I could. But it's just that this focus we have on stopping the bully it's way too far on that side of the spectrum, and it needs to be scaled back so that we look to the kid who's been bullied and say, hey, listen, you're getting bullied. Let's talk about ways we can help you to cope with it. And the problem was when I said that, I remember I said that in one faculty meeting. I had one faculty member get so mad at me saying, like, you're excusing the bully. I'm like, no, I'm not. I didn't say anything about the bully. I'm not talking about the bully. I'm talking about this kid. And that's the problem. So you're still focused on the freaking bully. And I guess I'm running up against human nature, because it's that whole, we look for the things that stand out to us and try to address that, right? It's a small world, and therefore I look for everything that confirms that. It's all the bullies, so let's look for the bullies and stop the bullies, and then forget about the kids who are actually being bullied. So yeah.
You should write a book.
Maybe I should.
That'd be good. Go do a TED Talk, and a book would add to your authoritative gravitas for doing these talks.
That is true. But it's funny because I'm a teacher first and foremost, right? So, and always have been, I'm sure, and I always will be. So it's interesting that you say you should write a book, because, hold on one second. Where are you? I actually did. So where are you? Here we go.
Well, I know you've got little respect.
Right. So, Mike, if you would allow me to share.
How did your speaking classes go, by the way? You still doing those?
What was that?
What happened with your speaking classes?
I'm still doing it.
Yeah.
So, okay, hold on. Share screen. So there we go. So, and my dog's barking. I apologize. He's annoying. So yeah, the whole point of the whole premise of this book is exactly what I've focused on. Is that, yeah, he stops a bully, but the way he stops it isn't by going after the bully.
Right.
So that's the whole point of the book. And of course, like I said, that's the teacher in me that sees things as a way of going to the kids and bringing it to the kids. So yeah, I probably should write a book for adults and for educators, but
why not?
Yeah, but it's funny because that's my heart is with the kids, right? And is like focusing on that.
Well, help the kids by teaching the adults.
Yeah.
Just like you're gonna stop drowning by going to the kids, is the other way around. You're gonna stop bullying by going to the adults.
Speaking of that, I've done a lot of the drowning prevention shows these past couple of weeks.
Yeah.
And they've gone so well. I'm really it's amazing how receptive kids are to it when you make it not a lecture to them about it, but engage them in it. And the feedback I've gotten from these shows has been so good. I'm actually, I was surprised by it. It really surprised me that it resonated so well with the kids, and especially interestingly enough with the schools that did our kindness program. When they did both, they're like, "Oh my God, this works perfectly. It's so good." I'm like, "Really? Funny how that works. Like, maybe it was designed that way."
I saw the saddest drowning story. I'm not going to pull it up. It's what it hit me more than maybe any of them ever had, because it was the realism. So it was a photo this mom posted of her kid about to go into swim lessons. Like, he's at the pool, and she posted these two pictures of him, and she said, he's my big boy's about to learn how to swim. He's nervous, or he says he's nervous. And then a short while after that, the kid was dead because he drowned at that swim lesson.
Yeah, I heard about this.
And seeing that photo of him, and then the next post is her, like, saying what happened. Yeah, crushing.
Yeah.
But
yeah, and to me, unfortunately, the takeaway from that from a lot of people would be that like, see, you can even die from a swim lesson. Like, I always have to look at problems from both angles and be like, wow, some people are just going to interpret that as like swim lessons are no good. They'll kill your kid.
Right.
So, obviously that was gross negligence, and just, right. Oh my God, how does that happen? But
where's same as always. Where's so and so?
Right.
It's the same story, right?
Yep.
Yeah, that's how it started.
That's how every drowning story starts.
Exactly. That mom said, "Where's so and so?" And
yeah, that's and that's what drives me crazy with drowning prevention is we want to point fingers and again focusing on the wrong thing. I had this to a small degree, but not to the degree we would have had Superstorm Sandy not been the major news story. The armchair quarterbacks automatically labeling you as a terrible human being, a terrible person because of this, and yet it started with, "Where's Reese?" And I thought he was with you. And every parent I've ever spoken to in the history of ever has said those words with their kid. So does that make every parent a terrible parent? No. Did that make me a terrible parent? No. Was there a terrible outcome? Yes, because that's life. And life has bad outcomes sometimes for things that we think are just run-of-the-mill, mundane stuff.
I mean, I've said it 1,000 times at this point, so I feel redundant. But other people haven't heard me say it 1,000 times, so I suppose I still can. That if you found your kid, if you've got some hilarious story about your kid, drawing a crayon mural on the wall, or
right.
covering himself in a food product, peanut butter, sugar, or whatever, or you found her, cutting off all of her hair in the bathroom, or covered herself in makeup, all these hilarious, my toddler is crazy stories,
right?
And you didn't have a protected pool, then the only difference between you and the parent of a drowning victim is luck.
By the way, I do have disturbing data for you.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So I made a point this year because I definitely wanted to incorporate it more into what I talk about when I speak about water safety to the kids. I now ask them, how many of you have had swim lessons? And I'd look at how many raise their hands. So when I say how many of you had swim lessons, most of them raise their hands. But I specifically talk about having a dedicated pool fence, not a fence around your yard, but a dedicated fence around the pool. Pool fencing. I ask them how many of them have it. Maybe one or two raise their hands. And that, so
I mean, bad for water safety, good for business, I guess. But
yeah, well, good for business if we can get more of them to do it.
Right.
So
yeah,
you hopefully maybe you'll see an uptick, because I do say to them, I say, kids, just so you know, in New York, in Suffolk County, New York, it is actually a law that you have to have a fence around your pool area. And the kids are like, oh, I don't have to have that. I'm like, yes, you do. I was like, you may not have it, but you're supposed to. But the town, of course, doesn't really enforce it. Anyhow, and I remind them that they can tell their parents that, go home, tell your parents, say, hey, we're supposed to have a fence around the pool. Just like I tell them, hey, if you're in the pool and there's an adult watching, which there should be, obviously, you never go without an adult watching, make sure the adult's eyes are on you. If they're not, give them a hard time. I was like, I want you guys to give your parents a hard time if you see them on the phone while you're in the pool or you're swimming. You say, hey, I'm more important than your phone. I'm more important than your conversation with your friend. So I now add, hey, I'm more important than what you think the yard's supposed to look like. There should be a fence around the pool. So
that's good work. Every now and again, someone says, aren't you worried you're going to run out of pools? I was like, no, I'm not actually. That's not.
No, not Eric. Not by the number of hands that went up.
Yeah, no. It's funny. People used to say that to my dad, 30 years ago, and he said the same thing. Like, no, I think we'll be okay. And here we are, 30-something years later, and still, no, we're still
good. That's such a weird statement. Like, why would you run out of pools?
I guess there's an idea. There's this finite number of pools in the country, and we're going to
finite number of everything.
Right. Yeah.
It's like if I sell rubber bands, aren't I afraid that people are just going to have maxed out on their rubber bands? Like, what?
I mean, I guess the pool ones are more. But I mean, there's, what about people who build houses? There's only so much land. Like, aren't you going to run out? We're going to run out of land.
Right. Exactly. Like home builders. Like, aren't you worried that there just won't be any more homes to build?
Right. Yeah. You're going to run out of spots for houses.
By the way, eventually we will. But that's a problem for the future, and obviously way in the future. So yeah. I don't think you're in danger. Based on my on what I'm experiencing, you've got a wide open market.
Yeah, so. Okay. Yeah.
And hopefully, me prodding them to.
Hope so too.
Yeah.
And I hope they get improvements from somebody. If it's not me, then get it from somebody.
Yeah, and it's like when I do the water safety shows, I tell them who sponsors the water safety show, when I tell them to go get swim lessons, I don't say that they have to exclusively go there. In fact, I make a point of saying there's all different places. So,
but there's only one Pullman's company, right? That's what you tell them.
It's funny though. I do tell them Lifesaver Pool Fence, and
yeah.
I even when I pull it up, it's got your logo and it's got the fence, and
you're the man. Thank you.
Hey. I like to take care of the people I care about, so
I appreciate it.
Well, there you go.
All right. Well, great job as always.
Yeah, I just wish schools would stop worrying about the bullies so much. And that's not to say I don't want them to not do it. It's just there's a lot of space in between that gets left out. So
I think you should make a YouTube video about this, and I think you should write a book for adults, and then go on like a promotional tour. Promoting the idea.
There you go. Look at you.
It's like I do this.
Right. It's like you have a channel where you give advice to aspiring business people, and
it's like I market for a living. Yeah, exactly.
You know what you should call it? You should call it like crippled CEO or something like that.
That's because I'm crippled and a CEO. Is that why?
There you go.
That's really smart.
Yeah.
I took the like I should take the two most defining characteristics about myself and make it the thing.
But I won't compliment you because I know you'll dismiss it. So.
I appreciate it, but I try not to believe my own hype.
It's funny. I just wanted to point out, since we're talking about what you do, and when I read that particular post about how you respond to both criticism and to praise, I initially wanted to write something. Like I felt compelled to write something back to you,
right,
about being able to that I do disagree with you. So I'm
Okay.
going to be honest. I disagree with you're looking at it by weighting both equally, and I
Okay.
don't think you should.
I mean, I appreciate the praise. I mean, it makes me feel good to some extent, but I just try not to like lean into it as the reason why I do things.
Right, and upon further reading, I realized that was really the point you were trying to that you made. I'm not going to say trying to make because that makes it sound like you didn't accomplish your goal. But yeah, I think and again, there should be balance because I think there's people who, upon hearing praise and upon hearing criticism, I think that's a lot of that has to do with what where you're at, right? So like when I tell kids this, I say there's plenty of kids who've heard, their whole life they're not fast enough, not thin enough, not smart enough, whatever. And if they hear it enough, they start to believe it, and then they expect to hear it, right? So it becomes expected, and the praise then becomes dismissed because they're going to focus on what they expect to hear, and what their bias is now leaning towards. So yeah, there should be a healthy balance, but I think getting more out of praise is definitely more important than getting more out of your criticism.
Right.
Criticism can be good too, though, and praise can be bad. Like success. Yeah. I tell my daughters this all the time. The only thing success tells you is that you're getting by.
Right.
Failure is how you grow. So, you got to take the good with the bad, I guess. So, but
I'm with you.
And there's all that space in between, and I think we lose track of that space.
Like Dave Matthews talks about.
Yeah.
There's Dave Matthews.
You know what? That's a perfect. You want to talk about great segues? That is a perfect segue into a science fact that sums this all up. Do you know that if you took all the humans existing today, okay, and you removed all the space in between their individual atoms,
okay,
and were to pack it together, it'd be about the size of a sugar cube.
A sugar cube?
Yes.
Wow. So the mass of all the humans on Earth.
Yep, all the atoms.
If you took, so you take
all the space between the atoms, which is we're basically mostly empty space.
Right. Yeah.
If you packed it as tight as you could, it'd be about the size of a sugar cube.
7 billion people compact this sugar cube. Wow.
Of course, it would create a black hole, but that's besides. Yeah. We can get into all that cool stuff, but yes, it would fit into about the size of a sugar cube.
That's kind of crazy.
Yeah. So
I know if you took all the people on Earth and you put them shoulder to shoulder standing up, that they would fit in Texas.
That's cool.
Yeah. There you go.
Think about that. So think about that, and that's all basically empty space.
Right.
Because if you took them all and compacted them as far, it'd be a little sugar cube in Texas.
In Texas, right? Yeah. They would probably melt.
So that empty space, there's a lot of it, and you need to account for it.
Do you know that song by Dave Matthews?
Yeah.
I'm
now you're taking me back to my college days.
So I used to see Dave Matthews in concert every summer for years. I did it for maybe 10. I don't know. I did it forever, right? Yeah, I did it a lot of times. And then I got to where, because he always comes for 2 shows in South Florida, back to back, and I would go to both shows. So I would see every July or June, whatever he comes, usually July. I would see Dave Matthews every Friday and Saturday. Like I would go to both. I was a big Dave Matthews fan. Actually, I think I was a bigger fan of going to the shows with my friends of mine, if I'm really being honest, than I am the music of Dave Matthews. I think it's true of everything I do, actually.
Makes sense.
But yeah.
Now I've got that song in my head.
It's a great song, and I had tickets to go see Dave Matthews again a couple weeks ago, and he got COVID, or him, or one of his. It was unclear who. They think it was him. Got COVID, and they rescheduled it to August or something. So I can't wait to be outside in a concert in August in Florida. It's going to be so cool.
Cool would not be the word I would choose.
Oh yeah, it's going to be great. So excited. What are you gonna do?
Well, enjoy.
I will. I'm going to see Theo Von on Thursday. You know who that is?
No.
He's a comedian. He's great. He's one of my favorites. If I could talk like anybody on the planet, if I had like the creative command of language that I could emulate a person or be on level, it'd be Theo Von. It is.
Now we're gonna have to look him up. See, you've created a compulsion for me now.
Yeah, look up Theo Von. This isn't happening, and he tells a story about how he got sober, and just pay attention to the way he uses words. It's remarkable. He's got a great episode of Hot Ones too. He did Hot Ones. Same thing. Just the way he talks is like he's not even doing a bit sometimes. It's just, his use of language is, I think, pound for pound, the most creative I'm aware of.
So he's a real wordsmith, huh?
Kind of, but not like you're going to be surprised when you hear him now because it's not like you think.
Well, no, you've intrigued me, so of course now that interest has been piqued. I'll have to look into it.
Theo Von, this isn't happening. Will you be around later today?
I think I will be.
Well, if you are, we'll be doing Jeopardy at approximately 3:00.
Yeah, it's been a minute since I've been.
I know, but now it's Tuesday. You can do. It's a whole new world.
That's right. It is. It's a whole new world.
Yeah, it's like Little Mermaid or Aladdin or whatever it is.
It's Aladdin. Yeah.
Is it Aladdin?
Yeah. Whole new world.
Okay. Yeah. Very good. So, all right. Well, great as always, Rich. I really appreciate you.
And I appreciate you.
Your new haircut is great. I think you should keep doing it.
I keep hearing it, so I guess I'm gonna have to.
It looks really good.
The funny thing is, it's not a new haircut. It's just my hair not cut.
Well, whatever. That is, it's better than it was.
All right. I will.
All right, and it was fine before, but it's better now.
All right, I'll keep it this way then. I
It's
mean,
the
my
combo
mom
of like the hair and the beard is really what's doing it.
That's what my mom said last night. She's like, it frames your face so nice.
Yeah, it really does. Yeah,
You look so handsome.
it really hides the maximum amount of your face. That's what's doing it. Really.
That's right. Yeah, thank you. That's a good point. See, it's like this is I've hidden most of my face. So really, Mom, what you're telling me is that thank God you got all that fur that hides the rest of that hideous visage.
That's why I wish I could grow a beard, wear a hat, and sunglasses. I think I'd be a lot better looking. That's really
I
how
always wear hats too, though. So usually, I almost always when I'm out, I have a hat on. So
I wear a hat at home. But,
and I will point out, you know what hat I love the Lifesaver hat you gave me.
well, thank you.
It's been a while since I had like the mesh hat in the back, and I love it. And I just forgot how. So yeah, and the kids were like, "Are you wearing that?" Like I'm like, "No, I just like the hat."
It's a good hat.
I'm sure Eric would appreciate that I'm wearing it out, but I like the hat.
I've worn it. I wore it out too.
You wore it for one of the interviews.
I did. My hair was so bad. And
I figured that's why you had it on. I'm like, his hair must have been crazy.
And so we have a PR guy, which by the way, I haven't heard anything from him in a while. So for the next interview, I was like, "Hey, should I wear the hat?" And he's like, "Don't wear a hat. Don't do that again." I was like, "Oh, okay. Well, don't do that again."
I liked it. So.
Whatever.
All right. Well,
All right.
hats off to you, and hopefully, I will be able to join you guys for Jeopardy today.
I would love that.
All right. Well, I'll try to be there.
All right.
All right. We'll see you later.
Later.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.